Ministry. Just before we get started, I'm just going to lay a little bit of, hopefully be interesting to what happened. I was running a club program in a church in Richmond, and it was, we had like 150 kids came in on a Wednesday evening, and we ran a Pioneer Club. One evening, there was kids from the community and from the church, most from the community. One girl went into the washroom and started cutting her wrists. And once I heard about it, I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? This was like probably 30 years ago now. It was before any of the safety issues were in place. And I thought, I need to figure out what to do in these situations. I need to make sure that when kids come into a ministry that I am in charge of, that they will be safe. That they will be safe. And that I will put everything I can into doing that. I went on to be the children's pastor at Willingdon Church. And at Willingdon, before I came, there was an incident there. I don't know if any of you remember it, but where a young teen boy molested a baby. And it was horrific for the church. It was terrible. The press got a hold of it, and the church was featured on all the news. It was very, very painful. So when I came in to be the kids ministry there, this was like 5 years prior to when I came, the first thing the lead pastor at that time said to me, you need to make sure that everything here is up to speed for safety and security. And I said, oh my goodness, I'm going to be paranoid. And he said, that's your job. You need to be so paranoid that this place will be safe. So I went on to do that. It was hard because at that time there's the police record check, the information the police want was not normal. There was no screening in place of volunteers. There no interviews. If you were a warm body, you could go ahead and go into the classroom with kids. There was no protocols at all around safety. So over the years of my time at Willingdon, I started producing material that our church could use, went on to teach it at the conference level, and got a whole bunch of stuff together to help us to navigate this new world. Ever since 9/11, parents have been very concerned with the safety of their children, with good reason. You just open up a newspaper, turn on the TV or radio, you will hear things that are just so sad around kids. And this world is not a great place. There is a lot in this world that we can be either really frightened by, but we don't need to be. If we take precautions and get things into place in our church, we don't need to worry about what's coming in to our church or the media finding out something that happened here, because we need to be proactive and make sure that your church and my church is a safe place, safe for our kids. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. My whole ministry life as a kids pastor has been one of the biggest things is safety of our kids. And it's sort of branched out. It's become bigger and bigger as the years have gone by. And it's hard to keep up with sometimes. But we do the best we can, and we put these protocols in place and train our people so that they know what is expected around working with minors, with children. Okay? So we're going to go through these things today. Ministry protocols, some definitions, why we do this, practical application, signs of abuse, what does that look like, reporting disclosures, and security screening. So I want you to sort of, hopefully you'll be able to digest all this. I do have some things to leave with the church if you want them, ideas that you can do. And if some of these things I have received from Daniel, so they're there, and I will point those out. That's actually your church that's asking you to do these things. All right, so let's get going. So protocols. A ministry protocol, these are ways in which we will manage both necessary weekly occurrences and emergency situations pertaining to children and other vulnerable persons in the church setting. Okay? So that's what I mean by ministry protocols. This is how we're going to do it. Both weekly occurrences and emergency situations as they arise. Okay? As much as we are able to do that. So, arrival and departure. So I think this is the way that you do it here, right?
No. I just gave you that thing for you to look at it and maybe give me a response.
Okay. So let's go through this. So in check-in, a child needs to check in. Every child you should know who is in your children's ministry. You need the child's names, the parents' names, and the phone number where they can be reached. Or some way, like if you have, do you have how do you check your kids in? Do you have computer check-in or do you have manual? Okay, but however you do it, you need to have those kids' names and how to get a hold of their parents if they're needed, okay? The volunteers must verify the age and grade and assigned class with the parents, so we need to have the 3-year-olds with the 3-year-olds. Okay? We're not going to have a brother who is in the grade 6 class go into the sister's class in grade 2. Make sure that they're in their proper classes so that children can actually learn without being distracted by a sibling or being involved with a sibling. It's really important that they're actually in the assigned class and that the parents know where that class is. Okay? So in our church, we do have a computer check-in system. If you want to look into that, I think it's a really good way to do it because they automatically get a name tag that they have on there themselves. And it gives them, our volunteers, the name, first name, second, last name, how old they are, so we know really where they need to go. If these kids are, running around the church somewhere, like, okay, let me see your tag. Okay, you need to go into this class. Make sure it just identifies the kids really, really well. If not, I've done also the manual thing but every child should have a name tag on them that tells their name, first and second name, and also their age, so that you know where they need to be. Okay. Our older kids. We only check in our kids up to grade 6. That's our elementary school level. The older kids, they don't have to check themselves in or out. They're able to manage themselves better, but our young ones have to do that. Okay. Let's see. So check-in times, 15 minutes prior to the start of ministry programming. That's really a great idea. First of all, it gets your parents here on time. They were starting 15 minutes early, and I do use the videos that I showed you before, those Seed Family worship videos. I have them on all the time, so the kids hear it and they run in to see what's going on. I try to use different songs on a rotation so that they can get something new, but yeah, I use that to get the kids into the open session where they need to be. And then check out. Now, verify both the child's name and parent's name before dismissing younger children. We have a parent card. The parent has to show us that card before we release any children into their care. Several years ago, it was the preschool was running. It was in the downstairs of the church, basement of the church. A dad came up to the room and said, I would like to take my son out. The son went, oh, hi, Dad. There's no doubt that he was the dad. The volunteer said, I need to see your parent card. And he said, oh, my wife has it. She said, well, And I always tell them, you can blame me. Blame me. So she said, yeah, Robyn will really, I'll get in trouble with Robyn if I don't see the parent card. So run and get it from your wife, and then I just come on back down. Well, he didn't come back down. The wife came at the end of the service, and she said, oh, I'm sorry, your husband was here earlier. Sorry about not letting him go, but I need the parent card. And she said, what? There's a custody battle. He was trying to kidnap the child. To this day, I get chills. He knew where his child would be. He knew that the wife would be upstairs. And he knew if he could just get that child, he could be across the border before anybody even knew that he had been there. This is what's happening in churches all over the place. I never thought it would happen where I was, but it did. We need to be careful about making sure our kids are safe. They need to be safe. It is, I found out later that it was the responsibility of the mom to let us know that this was happening, but you never know. You think, oh, I know my parents, but you don't know what happens between Monday and Saturday. You just don't know. You don't know what's happening. You have to be aware that everybody has to do the same thing. Oh, I know this family, but you know what? So here you go. You don't need to show me your card. The people behind you who are new, you know what you're telling them? This isn't a safe place for your child, because we don't check everybody. We just check some. So make sure when you are working with young children, minors, they are in your care. Do you know how badly that volunteer would have felt if she had released that child to that parent? How awful that would have been. How the family would have been just destroyed. It would have been just terrible. Oh, I said, oh man, it worked. Thank you for checking. That is probably the worst scenario that I've had around releasing children and making sure they go to the right place, right into the right hands, into the right parents, right adults. So check out older kids. We have the parents can sign a release if they're okay with their grade 5 and 6 children just leaving. That's fine. If there is something going on in the family, they may not want to. So the children will stay with the teacher until the parent comes to pick them up. So we ask the parents to please come and depart. We let them know when we're going to be done. Come and pick up your kids so their kids aren't feeling nervous about where my family. Last week we had a dad who Mom usually picks up the kids, but Mom was sick at home. And Dad totally forgot about picking up his children. So I'm like, well, I guess I'm taking you guys home with me today. Anyways, we did find Dad, and he was like, oh, he felt so bad. But just hang on to those kids. Let them know that this is important to us. We're not just going to let them go. We want to be more careful than that. Okay? So the prior approval of the parent is important for older kids. All right. So we're going to talk about ratios. Ratios is the how many adults to every child. For infants, it has to be 1 adult to every 3 children. So in your nursery, you need to have 1 to 3, and that is because of an evacuation. If evacuation is necessary, you have to be able to remove those kids quickly. So I don't ratio in if a teenager is helping, because a teenager can't carry 3 children. An adult may be able to carry 3 children, but the teenager maybe can only carry 1. So I have 1 to 3, not counting teens. Okay. For toddlers, 1 adult to every 4. 1 adult to every 4. Because you can grab it in 2 hands here, 2 hands here, and evacuate them. Grade 4, 1 to 4 is 1 to 5 kids, in grade 5 and 6 is 1 to every 6. So that tells you how many volunteers you need in your classroom in order to have it be really safe for those children. The younger the children are, the more adults you need, because children just don't play really well when they're small, preschool. They need to have quite a bit of supervision in their play. And make sure that your room capacity can safely have that many kids. Preschool children need that much space. They need to be able to go like this around without hitting anybody because that's how they play. This is mine. This is my toy. This is my puzzle. These are my Legos. They need that much room. The older they get, the less room they need until they become adults, and all they need is a chair. Okay? So that's why preschool rooms need to be so big. Not only because of the way kids play, but also because of the number of adults that need to be in the room to watch them, right? So classroom management. So here we know that an adult volunteer should never be alone with a minor child. Every effort must be made to provide the appropriate number of volunteers to ensure that there are always 2 or more volunteers in the room with minor children at all times. This is, I just told you the experience that we had in the nursery. That child was alone with that adult. That can never happen. That can never happen. The other thing about this is that it should always be unrelated people should be in the room with children if possible. Because if there's ever any incident that happens that the adult is accused of, there's someone who is not seen as someone who will just vouch for them. It'll be someone who's unrelated, right? So someone who's unrelated. So that is the best, to have unrelated people, adults in the room with the minor children. And of course, physical discipline of any kind is never permitted. Never. These days you cannot strike a child in any way, all right? All discipline should be appropriate, affirming, and loving. So we can talk about that in a little bit, but there is really no wiggle room there. If you're having trouble with children and you need to remove them from the room, then bring their parents into the situation. I had a child who was very street savvy. He came into the class, into our department, into our kids ministry with a friend. It ended up staying quite a bit and giving us quite a bit of attitude and mouth and all that kind of good stuff. One day he was walking past me and he looked at me. He was with his teacher, who was a guy, and he wasn't touching the little boy or anything, but he just said, "Abuse, abuse." And I'm like, I pulled him right out of that line. I said, "Sit here on this floor. You are not going into the classroom with that." I called his parents and I said, he will not be allowed in the classroom with that kind of tone, those words. That is not going to happen here. And he was not allowed into the classroom unless his parents came with him. A parent had to be with him, because I will not put my volunteers in a position of having that happen to them. Have a boy say, or a girl, whoever it is, say they're abusing me when it's totally false. That can ruin a person. And so you need to have that kind of, just those things are hard to do. You're like, oh, well, how do we do that as a church? Oh man, you're protecting not only this little boy, but the volunteers and everybody else in that classroom from what this little guy had in mind. So just to really be aware of how your classrooms are being managed. Okay, so we have three steps you can do. I'm going to give you these, and then I'm going to give you another that can be used as well. So first is if you're having trouble with a child in a class, and this is, if you have children, it's going to be happening. First of all, if there's a problem with discipline, or a problem with talking out, or a problem with behavior, ask the student to correct their behavior, and you can do it. You can say you get 3 strikes or you get 2 strikes. Ask them to do that. Make sure they know beforehand what the consequence will be. Okay, the overall consequence will be that you will be ultimately removed from the class if you don't behave yourself here. Second, if a student continues to struggle with behavior, kindly but firmly ask them to find another seat. And you may have to do that. I actually do that myself. I say, okay, you need to sit over here. And so, or you need to come over here with me. You need to come here. To remove them from the environment around them. Okay? And then if a student is disruptive or disrespectful, they may be asked to remove themselves from the situation. A couple weeks ago, we have a couple of kids that, there's lots going on in their home, and it's hard for them to, it's just hard for them to behave themselves. But they can do it. And so I said, this is your warning. This is it, to all the kids. Second time I say your name, we're going to be asking your mom and dad to come and get you. I'll tell you, they were as good as gold the whole time. I couldn't believe it. It may not work next time, but it worked that day. But you have to realize that the children around them are being disrupted. And I explained to the kids, when you are poking your neighbor is not listening to God's word. And when that's happening there, the people behind you are distracted too. They're not hearing anything about the Bible story either. So I want everybody to hear. So if you're the person who's instigating this behavior, this disruption, guess what? I'm going to be removing you and either relocating you or removing you you can sit with your mom and dad. So just be aware that your kids' classroom is where they're learning the Bible story. This isn't just YMCA stuff. This is eternal stuff. And you want your kids to be able to hear what God has to say for them. Okay? So that's a little bit about classroom management. Incident report, I have one here. These are all in our classrooms. They have to be filled out if there is an incident in the classroom, whether it's removal of a child or anything that happens in the classroom. We had fairly significant incident happen when 2 little preschoolers ran headlong into each other, and they just crashed their heads, and there was blood. You know how your head bleeds? There was blood, and it was all over the place. So we had to first. I'm just going to put a little thing in here. It's really good if you have first aid opportunities for these people, your volunteers, to learn, because you never know what's going to happen. In this instance, we did. The people who were volunteering at that time did not have first aid. When I got there, they were doing all the wrong things. So I was able to reverse that, to fix that. And then I said, have you contacted the parent? No. I'm like, contact the parent. There's blood. And so there's lots of things that need to be reported. That's a very, very serious one. She was taken to the hospital and all that stuff. But make sure that you have an incident. So when a child is hurt, if there's blood, you need to make sure that you're careful with that. Have first aid, have gloves available for that. If there is equipment that is broken, if they go down the slide and the slide breaks, write it up in an incident so you know what happened there. If the behavior is unacceptable and ongoing, write up the incident. We're not able to control. This is what we did. This is who was involved. This is when the parents were called. There is on here name of witnesses. One or at least 2 witnesses need to sign this that were there, and you need to keep this in your church. So if there's an ongoing or something that comes back on you saying, yeah, do you remember when that child had a laceration in her head, she was taken to the hospital? Well, all of a sudden they want to talk about that again, and it's already been 6 months ago. You need to pull this out and be able to have all the information to remind you of what happened, okay? So that you can go forward with that, okay? What else do I have here for incident report? So there should be also someone who has those, whether it's the pastor or the administrator. You need to know where those are. Just don't keep them for yourself. Hand them off to someone else in authority so that they can see what happened. So it's not a surprise when the pastor gets a call saying, this is someone from the lawyer's office, and we want to talk to you about this. They're like, whoa, what happened there? So that they have all the information. Does that make sense? Okay, hopefully. Yeah? All right. Physical contact, okay. So appropriate physical contact. Side hug, like this. Or arm, or like a hand on the shoulder or on the arm, just like that. That's it. You could maybe a light pat on the back. Good job. Handshakes, high fives. For younger children, you can walk hand in hand if you want. Older kids, no. So if you want to make sure, always sure. I want to also say that you need to respect the child. If they don't want, like, we have some boys in our group that have the awesome hair. It's like goes up all over. I like to go like this, like, that's really stiff. But only do it if they think it's funny too. Don't do it if they don't like it, because that will really turn them off. Or if they have don't take their hat. If they're wearing a baseball cap, just say, oh, cool, you're cheering for the 49ers, way to go, or whatever. But make sure every physical contact is appropriate. You never will go on to inappropriate, demanding or requiring physical contact or touch of any sort. You don't go up to a child and bear hug them. You just don't. That is just not appropriate. Prolonged hugs or frontal hugs, that's not appropriate. Kissing of any kind, no. Touching the chest or any intimate areas, no. You know that. Don't do it. Piggyback rides, no. Don't do it. I know that, especially at camp and our camp environment, kids like to jump onto the back of their guy leaders. That is not, I do not allow that. Number one, if they don't know that someone's jumping on them, they both go forward and they both crack their heads on the cement right there. No, second of all, it's just not appropriate to be carrying around a kid like that. Horseplay or wrestling, not appropriate. Throwing or spitting a child. This is really, kids love to get spun around. But small children, the ligaments of their shoulders and their elbows and their wrists are not fully developed. I've had a couple instances where this has happened, not in my ministry, but other places, where this shoulder has just popped right out as they're spinning. Or the elbow just popped right out when they're spinning. That doesn't have to happen, so don't do that. Another thing that can happen is you're swinging them around. Your hands are sweaty, their hands are sweaty, and you're spinning them, and then all of a sudden, off they go. Yikes, that is not good. So don't spin kids. And if you see it happening, stop it. Physical discipline, what we talked about before, is never appropriate. We don't do that in church. Grabbing a child while emotional or upset, say, "Oh, come here." No, don't do that. Just let them be upset. Or spanking also is not gonna be appropriate. Any questions on those things? This is really important. You have to be careful with these things. If you see any of this happening, put a stop to it. And let them know. I always, when I'm teaching my volunteers this, which I do a lot, I say, if this happens, I'm going to come up to you and say, please stop. And you're going to say, oh yeah, that's right, I'm supposed to do that. You're not going to be insulted. You're not going to be upset. You're just going to be like, oh yeah, I forgot. Good. Another thing I'm going to say on this is don't let children sit on your lap. Preschool, maybe. Once they get into kindergarten, no. They can sit beside you, but not on your lap. Please don't have them sit on your lap. Kids are really street smart. And you'll be surprised at how young they know stuff and they know how to manipulate. So please don't allow that. Okay? Okay. Nursery workers should not be diapering babies. That should not be happening in the nursery. We do have, I put this into practice several years ago, and now it's just a common thing that in nurseries, we don't diaper the babies. Okay? If parents can be called to attend to the care of the babies. If children are not toilet trained, call the parent. Have them help them with that, okay? And let your parents know that this is what's going to happen. Make arrangements for diapering stations to be in your washrooms or wherever they may be, so parents don't have to do it out in the foyer or something. But make sure that you're finding ways to do that to help the parents with that. Washrooms in the children's ministry hallway is reserved for kids only. This is what we have in our. And I noticed out here you have your bathrooms open. That's great. And I put this up there so that when children are in the building, there are bathrooms that are reserved just for them. So we don't have to worry about whether adults are in there or not. Okay? Keep the doors propped open like you do here so that you can hear what's happening in there. We had one incident one day. On a Sunday morning, a little guy was in there, turned on the water full blast, couldn't turn it off, so whatever. He left, and then there's water everywhere. The next little guy goes in, 8 years old, boom, on his back, and he just slipped all, hurt himself. The door has to be open so you can hear those things, so you know what's going on. All right, so that's one thing that's really important about that. Women only are a screened adult, the adults that are in your volunteer program and are screened. They are to assist with washroom duty for both girls and boys. So just women only. Okay, that'll just keep things kosher. Always have 3 people minimum, 2 kids and 1 adult, or 2 adults. Including hallway security. That's what we have, hallway security in our area per child. So always 3 people moving to the washroom and back. Either 2 kids and 1 adult or 2 adults and 1 child. Just keeps things really, really clear and above board. All right, any questions or pushback on any of that?
What age do you allow them to go to the washroom by themselves?
What age do I allow them to go by themselves? Only when they're out of my program. If an older kid, like grade 5, needs to go to the washroom, I alert the hallway monitor. Say he's going to. You know what happens if I don't? That grade 5 will start running around the church. He may not go back into the classroom. So I just keep it easy. Hallway monitor, he's going to the washroom, they'll watch to make sure he gets back to the classroom. Anything else around that? If you don't have a hallway monitor, send one of your volunteers with. Don't go into the classroom, into the washroom. Never go into the washroom with a child. Stand outside, wait till they're done. Say, did you wash your hands? Let's go back. So here we go. Classroom volunteers can escort children to the washroom, doors that are propped open, and remain in the hallway just outside the doors while the child or children use the facility. So that's just what we sort of talked about. Children should be able to manage on their own right here. In the case of twos class, we have a twos class. The female volunteer may assist with another screen adult keeping watch. So that in that scenario, you need two adults. One to help the child if they need help, and one to be just watching, so that there's accountability there. For the youngest kids, a parent may need to come to help the children. If an accident occurs, we have a call system. Do you have something like that? You can get a hold of your parents. Just get a hold of them and say, you know what, we've had a little accident. I always have extra stuff on hand, like another pair of pants or socks or underwear or whatever it needs to be for a kid in case there's an accident. And again, make sure children wash their hands before returning to the class. All right.
Sorry, the twos class means grade 2 or?
Age 2. Age 2.
Oh, okay.
Age 2.
Sorry, I translated it wrong.
Oh, it's age 2. Yeah. Sorry.
Age 2.
Yeah. I always know what I mean, but sometimes I don't actually say. All right. Where are we now? You guys still okay to keep going here?
Can you explain the call system at your church?
Okay.
Exactly what that means.
Yes. So we have a number assigned to each child when they check in. So that number is just for each individual child has their own number. We call the tech people, and they're doing the sermon notes and the PowerPoint on the front. And they are able to place that number on the screen so that the parents can see, and we have, if it's nursery, it'll be N120. If it's upstairs in the preschool, it is U120. So if it's the hallway, it's H120. So they know exactly where to go and whose child it is. So that's how we do it. If I know a church in Tri-Cities, they use the parent's cell phone. And so they'll text them, we need you in the nursery. And so anyway like that, but you'll need to gather all the cell phones for that. Okay, in order to get a hold of the parents. Okay? All right. Fire drill evacuation. So in each classroom, I have a chart like this that will show them, if you're, in this instance, if you're in room 110, this is how you evacuate our classrooms. You need to have something in order, in place to evacuate the building. If an alarm goes off, it is the law. If you don't evacuate when the alarm goes off, the fire trucks will come, and you are likely, after the first warning, to get a fine. So you need to know how to evacuate the building and make sure all the areas around the evacuation routes are clear for that reason. Also, this is why we have ratios, so we can get the kids out in a good way, in a good manner. I've found that the most practice has to be done in the nursery and with preschool. Once the kids are in grade school, they know how to evacuate pretty well because they do it at school all the time. So they're very, very handy. They really know what to do. So where are we? So children's leaders have a responsibility to safely and efficiently evacuate their children. Before proceeding to the specified exit, leaders must identify that all their children are accounted for. Make sure, that's why we need those. You need to know who's in your care. You have to know who's in your care. Take that. We put them on a list. So they have a clipboard with a list of their kids checked off. Parents will be instructed by the MC of the service to meet their children in the in our case it's the parking lot. You need an evacuation point that is not around where the fire trucks are going to be coming. Don't take them to the parking lot because they'll be in the way. They'll be in harm's way. So find a place, take them there, and the parents will know that they're not to rush to their classrooms to get them. That's just going to cause a lot of chaos. Get the kids out, parents will meet them out there. All right, and then you're going to line up the kids in an orderly manner. That's also on this in every room. So you're going to line them up. You're going to take attendance and the pen with you. One adult will lead the children out. One will be at the back to make sure the door is closed, the lights are off. That's indicating that the room is empty. Okay. Exit quickly and orderly. Don't allow parents to grab their children out of line. They can come with you, but don't let them grab their children out of line. And follow the regular checkout procedures out there. Okay? Have you guys done evacuation here before? No. Yeah. It's just something I think it would give everybody peace of mind to be able to know what to do. What happened at Northview? We had a little guy who was just fascinated by the red things on the wall. He was in our Imagine as our special needs, and he was one of the taller little guys, and boom, down it went. And it was shocking. We had to evacuate. We had to. And that happened twice, two different times. It was never emergency. It never was fire. But it was, the fire trucks had come, they checked the building, we couldn't go back in until it was all clear. So if that ever happened, it would just be great to know what you should do, right? Okay? Okay, so we sort of went over that already. Here, when we're out there, figure out what you want your kids to do. I have them just sit in a circle with their grades, with their classroom, with their teachers, so that they will be organized. The kids could be upset if it is an actual fire. They could be nervous, upset. Make sure you keep them calm. They shouldn't be running around. They should be staying where they can be accounted for, and then the parents will be there to pick them up. Let's see. So then the last thing is the security. Only parents, students, approved volunteers, and church staff are allowed in secure ministry areas. This is what we have at our church, so that people who are just wandering around or just curious, they know they're not supposed to be in this area. We don't want anybody who is not security screened to be in the kids area. Okay, so if you have tags or ministry shirts, something that identifies your volunteers as being secure, as being screened, have them wear them at all times, and then that'll show people that's a screened person, that's a safe person. All right. Any individual not belonging to the area must be escorted out of the area immediately. Promptly notify a ministry leader or security team member. You might think that this is unlikely, but it happens more often than you think. You're in a very busy area here. I'm sure you have people in here just being curious. Wonder what's going on in here. I had an RCMP officer as one of my volunteers, and he assured me that every week there's somebody in the building who's watching to see how you manage your kids. How easy would it be for me just to nab one? How easy would it be? And he said, so he would actually be my other set of eyes. What should we do to make it more safe for our children? So we weren't even in a busy area over at Northview. Willington was. Cloverdale is as well. There's people in there all the time. No one knows who they are. And we just need to be we just need to be aware. I don't want to be paranoid, even though my other pastor said I should be, but I want to be aware. And what do? Just go up and say, I don't think I've met you. What is your name? They will never want you to know their name. They will leave. I'm Robyn. What's your name? Why are you here? Are you looking for a kid? Do you have your parent card? Could I see it? Yeah. So just be aware of that. Due to the nature of child custody laws, volunteers must be aware and alert that the check-in and check-out person are the same, unless noted otherwise. So what that means is you need to, like I told you that little scenario that happened with a child custody battle, make sure your volunteers are willing and able. If they're not willing, put somebody else in charge of checkout. Someone who will say, no, I need your card. So this is really funny. I had a instance where a dad came to get their child and he didn't have his card. And so my rule was, you need to go find Robyn. So that's very hard to find me on a Sunday morning when I'm running all over the place. So this guy finally caught up with me. Oh, he was upset. His face was red and he was a big guy. I remember he just told me what he thought about this rule. This is nuts. I'm trying to get out of here. We got to blah, blah, blah. All this reason why he should have been given his child. And I said, for security reasons, we will not allow your child to go without the card. So I wrote him out of something, and I said, here, give that to him. He'd been already 15 minutes looking for me. I gave him the thing. It's okay to let him have his child. Signed, Robyn. I got his driver's license, all that information. You know what? He never forgot his card again. He never did. So I just like, okay, it worked. He will never forget his card again because he knows we will not be lenient on that. All right. All doors must remain open that are supposed to be open and locked that are supposed to be locked, and that's the however you manage that in your church. Okay. We're just going to quickly go through definitions of what we're talking about when we talk about physical abuse. Any physical force or action which results in or may potentially result in a non-accidental injury to a child, which exceeds that of which could be considered reasonable discipline. So if you bruise a child, if you grab them and bruise a child or hurt the child, if they have red marks on them, even if a child is in the classroom and they get bitten, that's physical abuse. So you have to realize that, take care of that. It's hard. Sexual abuse, any touching, invitation to sexual touching, or any other sexual acts relating to a child committed by an adult. A minor child is 18 or under, we'll see that in a minute. This definition excludes normal affectionate behavior towards children and normal health or hygiene. So bathroom, that's why we have 2 people in there, but anything else could be deemed as sexual abuse. The next, we sort of went through ratios. We did, emotional abuse. So that's attitudes or acts that are likely to produce long-term serious emotional disorders. A child is a person under the age of 19 and includes youth of any physically or mentally challenged person. So if you have special needs adults in your congregation, they are in this category of a child. An adult is 19 years or over. Okay, these are from the Ministry of Children and Family. The number of adults in a classroom, that's the ratios. We talked about that before. So these guidelines are designed to assist us as a church to protect us. This is not just to give you more to think about, it's to protect you. Protect the vulnerable from abuse. We have lots of special needs kids in our church and adults in our church. It's to protect our workers and our volunteers from false accusation. That was why I pulled that little kid out of the line. I did not want our volunteers to have false accusation. It's to protect the church from litigation and loss of testimony. You know, several pastors later at Willingdon the lead pastor was at a restaurant and was just chatting with his friends that he had there. They're talking about their church. And someone came up to him and said, "Oh, I hear you're from Willingdon." And he went, "Oh, yeah." He said, "Oh, you're the church that abuses children." That was 10 years later. 10 years later. That was just shocking. And the guy was just mortified that that is what they thought of the church. So it's also to protect our pastors from litigation and potential loss of ministry and career. Your pastor can get so entwined with all of this that they just can't survive. They can't survive. So this is why we do this. This is why we do it. And also to recruit volunteers who will provide for the safety of children who are served by the volunteers. So we do it to find those people who really do want to be with the kids for the right reasons. For the right reasons. Due diligence is what the law says. If you say you're going to do this, you need to do it. If you say you're going to have ratios, you need to have ratios. If you say you're going to do evacuation, you need to practice and have that in place. If you say you're going to screen your adults, you need to screen your adults. Due diligence is what the law says. It means putting in place appropriate measures to ensure the safety and security of the children and volunteers in your church, carrying out the details of the security procedures in a clear and consistent manner to the best of your knowledge and ability. So when you put these in place, you have to do them. If you have washroom protocols, you need to do it. And you know what? Our insurance at our church is tied to whether we actually do this or not. Our insurance is able to be less if we do these things. Your insurance can go sky high if you don't, because these things really do affect the church. Okay, so practical application is just submitting to the criminal record check. That's police information check. That's this one here. So anybody who works with kids or any vulnerable adults, vulnerable persons have to do this. And on the back there is a place where you have to sign. You may have to do fingerprints if you're working with vulnerable children. You need to fill out and submit a ministry application. Our ministry application is here. So anybody working with kids has to fill this out. It has some things on the back as well that they need to agree to. Statement of moral integrity. That's the things that we ask all of our volunteers to adhere to. Christ-like behavior. Meet with a ministry supervisor for an interview. I think I have interview questions here. I'm not sure if I brought those, but you can make up the questions you want there. Keep all of these things on hand. File them away per person so you know you have everything. Ask them to attend ongoing training sessions. Congratulations, you check that one out. Implement all security measures as they are put in place, and that's what we're talking about. Do what you say you're going to do, and know the signs of abuse and how to report. Okay? So these are what you can look for physical abuse. If you're working with kids, you can get these off the Child and Family page to give to everybody indications of physical abuse, what you're looking for, welts or bruises, injuries at various stages of healing, different color bruises, maybe a black bruise here and a red bruise here, some of this healing, injuries inconsistent with a child's age, or burns, rope burns, all that kind of stuff. Just be on the lookout. Honestly, I teach this, but we've never had that. We've never seen that yet. So I'm really thankful for that. But it's good to know, right? Just in case. Sexual abuse, sexual explicit play, drawings, or knowledge. If you're asking kids to draw and they, it's like, whoa, this we need to think about this. Drawings or descriptions which are sexually explicit and not age appropriate. Promiscuity, sexual aggression with others, self-mutilating, that's what happened at the church, one of my first ones. Or being excessively clean. If a teenager just has to wash their hands all the time, they just have to be clean all the time, that is an indication that something's not quite right there, okay? So, reporting all incidences of abuse or suspected abuse must be brought immediately to the director's attention, who will then ask that an incident report be completed. So that's done. And this means same day, preferably same hour kind of immediacy. You don't think about it. If you are suspecting something, it needs to happen. That's the law. If you don't report, you can be in trouble. If you knew something was happening and didn't report, that's on you, because you are the person who knows about it. We talked about the incident report. I do keep those in our classrooms so that our volunteers can have them. You need to know who you're reporting to in your church. Like first report comes to me because I'm the one that's around. This has happened. I suspect this. They tell me, and I take it from there. Okay, so now I know. Now I've got to do something about it. So, does your church want me now to go to the administrator or the senior pastor or the head of elder board? What do they want me to do with it? And then that has to be reported that same day. Okay? Because remember, we are protecting children. Okay? It might be awkward, but we are protecting kids. All right, so these are just, I'm showing you here, the application forms. This is what that is. I think I have them here. Yeah, there's that. I just showed you that. These are just the security screening pieces that you need to have on each person. That helps. It's a vulnerable sector applicant. Now, for me, I have to do a fingerprinting because I am actively involved with these vulnerable kids. We have special needs kids and young children, minors, all that kind of stuff. And don't be freaked out if they ask you to do this, because sometimes they ask you to do it because your birthday or your name is the same as someone who is on file as an abuser. So that does happen. And so this goes to our police when they go to the police station. Now, you said you do have a charge for your screening to be done.
On the city.
Yes, it does.
Vancouver, 75. Burnaby's 25. Coquitlam, 25. I think Surrey is free.
Surrey is free. Yeah. So wherever your volunteers live, that's where they have to be screened. So if you live in Surrey, it's free if you're a volunteer. If you're living in Burnaby here, 25, something like that, there's a charge. Vancouver is the most expensive. So, but we send a letter along like that. Interview questions, these are sort of the kind of things that we ask. Tell me about your family, spiritual journey. Just to get to know them better. You just want to know who you've got with your kids. And the washrooms, I showed you that. So that's just an example of what we do to make sure that people know that these are reserved for children. And even the volunteers who are adults, we ask them to go into a different washroom as well. So it's just only children are in there. Okay? So that's the end of. Is there any other questions that you have around safety or security with your kids? I'm really honored to be here this afternoon. I thank you for sitting through so much information this afternoon, and I hope it's helpful for you. I'm going to do a little something different now. This is right for your classrooms, for your teaching. It's learning styles, reaching each child. You know, Psalm 139 says, "How you made me is amazing and wonderful." I praise you for that. Every child is different. I have 3 kids. I always say I have one of each because they're all so different. One is artistic, one is very sports-minded, the other is extremely curious. And so experiments are huge for him. So we're going to talk about how do we reach a classroom full of children that are all so different. Everybody has likes and dislikes. If I asked you what's your favorite food, I don't know, there'd be lots of different choices. How about a color, favorite color? What about your favorite sport or your favorite animal? All kinds of different things. If you ask your kids in your classroom, what's your favorite subject? Well, might be recess, but there might be a lot of different answers there too. So each child has a favorite way of learning. And this just sort of shows you that some are straightforward, some are fancy, some are a little bit styling and different colors. So we're going to talk about learning styles. And I won't make this very long. I'm hoping you can catch it really quickly. But if not, there is a book here called Learning Styles. And it is by Marlene Lefevre, who is one of the best in explaining this. So there's 4 different learning styles. One is the imaginative. The imaginative child says, why do I need to know this? What does this mean for me? What does it mean? The analytic says, what do I need to know? I want content. I love all the details. The common sense child says, how does this work? Can I experiment with this? The dynamic says, what can this become? They will say, what is the application? How can I do this? I want to do this. I don't want to talk about a clean earth. I want to go outside and pick up the litter around the yard. So those are the different kinds of ways of learning. Those are the 4 common ones. How do we learn? The modes of learning. Oh, here. I have these here. So there's 4 different kinds. The imaginative says, how is life lived? Why or why not? It's a heart thing. Analyticals, it's a head thing. They're thinkers and watchers. Common sense, step by step. Tell me what I need to do next. How does this work? They use their hands. Dynamics are all about what can this become, application. It's their spirit that is touched. And what happens is, if you're an imaginative teacher, you will find the common sense people very hard to teach, because you are always going to be teaching a certain way. If you're a dynamic teacher, the analytic kids will drive you crazy. So you need to be aware of that. What is your learning style? What is your teaching style? Because you will teach the way that you learn. And that will be difficult for the next one. Like for me, I'm a dynamic. The analytical kids, I'm like, you're just driving me nuts. So I need to know that, right? So that I can include them and make sure that they have some real good content for them. We have 3 different ways. We do it by hearing. We learn by hearing, enjoying oral discussion. These kids remember by talking out loud. They're not trying to be disrespectful. That's just the way they learn. They're going to repeat everything. They need to have things explained orally. They have trouble with written instructions. They talk to themselves. They repeat phone numbers in order to remember. Visual learners remember visual details. Prefer to see what they're learning. They want this. They want this, or pictures. They like to have pens and paper handy to doodle. They have trouble following lectures. Like this would be very difficult for them. They like to write down instructions or telephone numbers. So they write things down all the time. Like, you want me to do that? Let me write it down. Let me write it down. And then there's the kinesthetic, and they're the people who need to handle things. They prefer activities. They want to get up and do stuff, actually do what's being talked about, like to move around. They often talk with their hands. They like to touch things in order to learn about them. Like they want to say, oh, what is this? Oh, that's really feels weird. Like they'll want to always touch things. So They remember things by recalling who did what rather than who said what. So they want to see things happening, and they'll remember when they can see things happening. So that's just the basic learning styles. So how can we apply this? Again, Dale Hudson says, children are like wet cement. But remember, we only have a short window of time until the wet cement turns to concrete. We must impress God's word, wisdom, and ways into their lives while we have the opportunity. So you have these kids, remember, for 1 hour a week out of the 168, maybe 2. What are we going to do with them? Are we going to reach every one of them? They don't all fit into the puzzle so perfectly like we would like them to be. We need to find out how we can reach them in the way that they can learn. So what kind of kids do you have? Do they look familiar? I could probably name them from my ministry. So there they are. Your kids are coming in to see you tomorrow. So we have different ways of teaching them. First one, they might be word kids. There's 8 ways. Word kids. Jesus used stories. So ways to deepen this child's understanding is tell or read stories. Have students write down stories or poems. Now, when kids like to they like to talk, give them an opportunity to talk. Give them an opportunity. So you're going to be teaching Jesus fed the 5,000. Every time I say a number, you're going to say this verse. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4, 5,000 fed, and still there were more. So when we go to John chapter 6, and we read it, hold on, let me get there. Here we go. So we say, Jesus looked up and saw a large crowd. So he said to Philip, where can we buy bread? I'm going to pop down to say, here it says, okay. Jesus said, have the people sit down. There's plenty of grass in that place. And they sat down. About 5,000. So we say, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4. 5,000 fed, and still there were more. They sat down. Then Jesus took the loaves and gave thanks. He handed out the bread. He gave them as much as they wanted. When all of them had enough to eat, there was 12 baskets left over. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4. So every time you say a number, you're going to let the kids say that first. The kids who like words are going to love it. They're going to love it. All right. So the next one is logic. So these are the ones who want to analyze everything, okay? Why, this is logical to them. Why Jesus said, why do you notice the little piece of dust in your friend's eye, but you don't notice the big piece of wood in your own eye? Okay? Kids with logic want abstract thinking, logical reasoning, problem solving, computers. So ways to do this is by helping them to explain things step by step. And one thing you could do here, okay, maybe you're talking about John the Baptist and Jesus were cousins. So they were born 6 months apart or something like that. Hey, how about we all stand up and we get ourselves organized according to birthdays. We'll start with January on this side and all the way through December. The kids who are logic will be the ones who are organizing everybody. So they get a chance to use their learning style by organizing all the kids into a big line of birthdays. Okay? Another thing, some kids are picture kids. So they want to see what is happening. All right? So they're wanting to have things that they're drawing or sculpting or imagination. So this is where you want to have some, maybe today we're talking about, let's see, let me just think. Maybe we'll go back to the loaves and the fishes story. So you're going to ask them, you're going to give them some Play-Doh, and they're going to make loaves and fishes out of Play-Doh. These kids will just love that because they can use their hands and make something that pertains to the story. Okay? That's their learning style. And you know, kids will be patient and will be open to ways that they don't enjoy when they know something is coming that they do like. So as you're doing your story, and I was thinking of getting the curriculum up here, but when you're looking at your curriculum, find ways like, do I have some of these teaching styles in there that will help our children to learn the way they like to learn? Okay? Something they'll look forward to. All right, the next thing is music. Kids just have rhythm. My little 2-year-old, not quite, that learned how to move today, you put on music and he is just going like this. No one taught him to do that. He just does it. And so they like rhythm and pitch. They respond to music in different ways than other people do. But you can have things in the classroom that kids can use, like either just keeping, like they marched around the city of Jericho, just something like that. Let them have something, or if you're singing, give them bells that they can use while they're singing a song. Okay, so these music, they're probably the easiest because you can just put on a tape or a CD or something of music and give them something and let them just enjoy the music. Okay. All right, another movement. So here, this is the verse that I have here is that Jesus actually got up. He went. He put a towel around him, and he went and he washed the disciples' feet. So these kids like to use their bodies. They're good at handcrafts, but they like to move around. I think most kids like this. So if you're talking about Gideon and they put torches under the jars, remember? And they marched along with that. And so have things like that they can actually march around the room. Or, you know, Mary and Joseph went from Nazareth. This is Nazareth. That's Bethlehem over there. Let's go, you know. So just find ways to let kids get up and move around. Okay, that will really help. That's a learning style that is probably every child likes that. All right. Quiet kids. Do you have any quiet kids in your group? Those are the ones you hardly even, you know, they're like, oh boy, you're quiet. I don't have to worry about you because you're just quiet. But be careful about calling kids shy if they're quiet. They're just not noisy. They're not shy necessarily. They're just quiet. And so give these kids a chance to have a time of reflection, a time of thinking about what you talked about, not always being noisy and active all the time, but just to be able to debrief or give them a chance to have independent time, like give them a journal to write in if that would be what they would help them. Okay? Some kids are people. They like people. So, yeah, Jesus chose 12 men and called them apostles. People around him, he chose the people. They're friendly, they're social, they communicate well, they like people. So use interactive learning techniques. Like get them into groups together and give them small groups. Like if there's 10 in your class, put them in groups of 3 or 2 or 3 or 4 or something like that. And give them a question to talk about and let them talk amongst their group. They really like hearing people, being with people, being a part of what people are doing. This isn't hard to do in your class. Just have a little 2-minute question, get into group. What about this? This is a question for you. And then nature. Nature is the last one I have. many of the parables have to do with nature. You realize that, like the sower and the seed. You're talking about the sower and the seed. Bring the seeds in. Give the kids seeds. Put them in their hand. This is nature. Have them plant them, perhaps. But bring things in of nature. If you're talking about fish, if you have fish at home, put them in a bowl and bring them. Let them see the fish. Bring nature into your classroom so that your lesson will take up that much more meaning when you give the kids a chance to learn in the way that is easiest for them. Okay? Or go outside. If it's a nice day, take them outside. Let them sit in the outdoors. Bring in an animal or plant. Okay? Or often they would love to serve others by doing outdoor tasks, being outdoor and doing things, picking up the garbage around the church or something like that. So those are just some really, I told you it'd be a really fun, quick one, but just to encourage you to bring these learning styles into your class. Don't teach them by lecture all the time. Don't teach them by video all the time. Find different ways to incorporate your lesson into your lessons so the kids of all these different kinds of learning styles get a chance to learn God's Word in ways that are easiest for them. The way they're built, the way they're made. So make sure that you accommodate that as much as you can. So this is again, West Stafford said, in this crazy, fast-paced world, it is easiest for the weakest, the most vulnerable, the littlest among us to get hurt in a stampede. So this is just a reminder. Let's look at our kids. Let's learn who they are and how they learn, and let's build our lessons so that they actually can learn the way they need to and want to. So I just want to go through a couple of things here, these Bibles here. These are called NIRV, a New International Reader's Version. This is a child's Bible that is written as a translation, the New International Version, but the language, the vocabulary is more suited to a child, and the sentences of the scripture verses are shortened so that they can actually read them and understand them better. So these are the Bibles that we give to our kids. There's this, and there's this one, it's Superheroes. It has some glasses in there if you want. All the pictures are in 3D, so that's sort of fun. So there's also some ideas for devotionals there. There's lots of resources out there. If you just look to what kind of devotion. There's one by Louis, what's his last name? Gigliato or something like that. He does what is it? Yes. Yes, he has two great ones now that are great for family devotions if your kids are older. Then we want to talk about one last thing about reaching teens, right? So, teenagers. How many here have teenagers in their home or in the classroom? Yes. Teenagers. We went through that formation, formation of their stages of development. Teenagers can be all over the place. I was telling Daniel that in one of my classes, they were described as their brains. In their brains, there's a monkey in their brain, and it goes from one side to the other, and really no logic at all. But they just go from one side to the other, and they just respond differently all the time. They're developing. Their brains are developing. Their bodies are developing. The world is changing around them. Their peers become really important at this time. And so you need to just be aware of what's going on with them. Keep communication open as you possibly can. Keep talking to them, even though they don't want to talk. I have two boys and a girl. My boys, I had the best conversations with them in the car, because we're both facing this way, and they didn't have to see mom looking at them, asking them questions. So the best information came out when in that environment, and I knew that. So I tried to make time to drive them to practice or something so that I could communicate with them in a way that's most comfortable for them. But sometimes, our kids just seem to go off the rails for a while. And I wanted to tell you, it's not your fault. Especially if you are doing like we talked about before, if you are doing as best you can with what God has given you. You are being faithful to God's word, to teaching them in your home, inside and outside, standing up and laying down at the table, outside, everywhere. You're bringing God's word into their life. That is what God requires of you. That is what he requires of you. You're doing just what he's asked. I had a daughter. I'm like, what happened to my sweet little girl? Oh, it was tough. Between the ages of 13 and, 17. Wow, it was hard. My boys weren't that hard. What's really interesting, it was my girl that had the hardest time. Today, she is a very strong Christian young lady. Great mom. I'm so thankful. I would say parents and teachers of these teens, I'm not an expert. I did grow 3 of them. I would just say, just continue to pray for them. Pray for their protection, that they would be protected from the evil one, that their minds would be protected. Do as much as you can with that rod in your hand to protect your home. And don't be afraid to be the parent. And when it feels like all they're doing is just heaping rebuke on you, just keep praying for them. Don't take it personally. They think you know nothing right now. In a few years, they'll go, wow, my dad's the best. So just be patient. Ask the Lord to help you with it. Like I said, I'm not an expert. I'm not a youth pastor. Get alongside people who have the same thing going on, and just get advice from each other. Yeah. So I just want to encourage you with that, and hopefully these teaching methods, these learning styles, will help you to understand the kids in your home and the kids in your classroom better. I always wish I'd known this when my kids were little, like I defined what they were going through, how they learned and stuff, but I didn't know this till quite a while later. But there are a lot of books on learning styles and teaching methods that you can get and be able to know. This one will test you. You can find out what your learning style and what your teaching styles are, and it will really help you. Oh, I wanted to show you this one too. Do you guys know about this? You have this Jesus Storybook. If you don't, it's the best ever. I like this. It's the subtitle is "Where Every Story Whispers His Name," and some of the pages, most pages are like this, but there are some that are like this way. So I think it's really fun. So this is really fun for your preschool kids. All right. Well, that is what I have for you, and this is just the last one. Let the children come. Don't keep them away. The kingdom of heaven belongs to people like them. So God bless you as you train and influence kids for his kingdom. Thanks.